Hey, everybody. Welcome to OPP. And obviously, we had a little technical difficulties because the intro said Tech Tuesday. It's obviously not Tech Tuesday. And we already have our guest in here. We were going to drop him in 30 seconds. But hey, Bob, you're here.
I'm here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me over. We're in.
Yeah. Well, our little intro was gonna say is when we were growing up, we never had like magazines or anything like on the coffee table. We always had the Denny's catalog. That was like our thing, and our dad made us read that all the time. So yeah, he
Yeah.
brainwashed that into us.
Yeah, it's funny. Like there's brands that are just synonymous with like our upbringing, and it's like Kodak, Fuji, Agfa, and Denny. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
a
Well, we
cornerstone.
always
So
we always used to like to have a nice movie star or some pretty face on there.
Yeah.
I think
yeah,
Dolly Parton was the big one at one time.
Was that your
maybe.
pick?
No, what I did sell the backdrop to the photographer one day. He called. It was like late in the week, like a Tuesday or Wednesday. It said they were shooting a country music awards, up the road in Mississippi somewhere. And he needed a background right away, and we set up a background that he wanted and got it to him within a day or two, and they shot that photograph. And then later on, after it had come out, we talked to him about getting it to put on our catalog and worked out all the details.
No
But
way.
that was
Whoa,
pretty
that's
cool.
amazing.
And then
Yeah.
Denny had, Denny eventually had it on the wall leading to his office. Right when you go into his office, a big picture of Dolly Parton. And we talked about earlier, but we had that fire that burned everything down. That we actually replaced that, got another one, put it right back in the same place. But that was we always tried to have a nice cover for the catalog.
It
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense. It makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, it was like a professional looking, like you said, pretty serious um magazine that was up there with like the rest of anything else that we'd see off the shelf of like any grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we it came to be something that people could look at to get ideas to how to shoot different
Yeah,
scenes and
yeah,
different setups. So it got to be more of that later on. People just like to look at the photography part of it.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we always talked about that swag growing up, right? Whatever we got. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So Bob, I'm obviously legend in the industry, right? We see you all the time. Every trade show you go to, you'd be there.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll talk about your what you're doing right now, but maybe like we'll start from the beginning. Like how did you get in the industry?
Well, I've worked for Denny. I just recently retired. Now I'm working just part time, a couple days a week. But it's about 48, 49 years. But in the beginning, I was just working for him part time, going to college. I'd take classes in the morning, and at the time we were just in an old cotton warehouse in Mobile, and I'd come in after around 1 o'clock, and I'd come in, and we did mostly or strictly all just hand painted backgrounds. And so the hand painted backgrounds, they had to be stretched on a frame, and then it had to be primed with a white primer, and then they let it dry overnight, and then the artist would paint it the next day. And then after that dried, you'd go out there and cut it out, and then mount wood on the top and bottom on, or roller, window shade roller, whatever the mounting was. But
Hmm.
I'd come in after college, after working at school and work the afternoon. I would, stretch canvas. I would prime them, and trim out what needed to be trimmed out to mount it, and then take it up to shipping and ship it out. I was doing a little bit of everything.
No kidding.
But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I did that for a while, and at that time we had 5 or 6 artists, and we weren't selling any props at that time, just mainly artwork. And
Yeah.
when Denny started the company, his father-in-law was a photographer in Mobile with M&A Studios, and Denny
Hmm.
married his daughter. And JN, he had a real successful studio, and Denny was working for him, and he'd been going to college too, and going to school. And whenever he started looking for backgrounds, he couldn't find any backgrounds anywhere. The only company he could find was this Pierce up in Minneapolis. And Pierce Company was another background competitor. So he got together with a local artist and started the company, and he started making backgrounds. But I got with him within a couple of years after he started, and worked with him. But as time went on, I was going to school, and then at some point I just figured, what the hell with school? I got a full-time job here. If I wanted to just grow at this company, because I knew it was a young company going to be growing. And so I learned a lot just working under Denny, and he taught me a lot of things about business and so forth and so on. And then eventually I started going to trade shows with him. We started doing trade shows, and I just moved up, to my current position.
What were you taking in school?
Marketing classes, and just basic standard stuff to start out with. But mainly, business or marketing was my forecasted degree. I never graduated, but those were my classes I was taking.
That's where that catalog came from, right? Like that was the marketing, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought you went to like college for like canvas stretching or something.
Yeah, I felt like it. But yeah, that was a pretty tough job doing all that. But
yeah,
we kept growing, and then Denny had found this company up in Chattanooga that was making urethane styrofoam props. And somehow he got involved with them, and we would drive up there and pick up a load of wagon wheels and fence props and rocks. And I guess I'm not sure if they were making them for oil mills or how we got involved in that, but we started reselling or selling to school photographers, props that they could use in the photograph.
Yep.
And then eventually we just bought the machinery to do it in house. We just bought all the plastic manufacturing equipment to start making it ourselves. And that's when we started doing the wagon wheels and fences and tree wise, which some of that stuff is still popular today. Different versions of it, but
yeah,
it's been a growing thing over the years.
So maybe what was your first trade show? Do you remember like what year that was and where it was?
I don't remember the exact year, but that would have probably been going up to. We used to go see Delmar and School Pictures Incorporated. They were the two school outfits. We would go visit them for sales meetings. But I think the first trade show I went to was up in Chicago with Denny, and it might have been the PMA, one big show, big PMA show. And I remember spending a lot of years going to Atlanta, going to the Southeastern PPMA, the Professional Photographers of America.
Uh-huh.
They had the regional shows. The Southeast was always a big show for us in Atlanta. I remember we could drive to that. So I remember driving a van load of backgrounds and props to that every year.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But,
yeah.
How were those how were those shows back in the day?
Yeah.
we hear you. It sounds like you're on grandpa duty there.
Sorry?
It sounds like you're on grandpa duty there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true.
I thought that was Mike.
My wife, my wife is actually a nanny. She's our grandchildren live up in Pennsylvania, but my wife watches two little girls.
Oh, got it.
She brings them over to the house every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're like
they're stretching backgrounds for you too, hey?
Yeah.
Got to get them trimmed up. Yeah.
Yeah,
but what? T, go ahead.
I was just saying the question I was like, how are those shows back in the day? Those massive PMA ragers.
Yeah, those are PMA was always a big show. And I remember that one we went to in Chicago. You had to deal with the unions a lot. The unions wouldn't let you do different things, and we would bring a big setup like we have, similar to what we have now, like a roller system and the backgrounds hanging down, and the union wouldn't let you do any of that. You had to pay them to set it all up for you.
Really?
And Denny used to argue with them about letting us do it ourselves, and
Yeah.
I remember one year, Denny was having me do something, and the little guy in the steward would ride by in the car and said, "No, you can't do that. You know, you need to go get so and so, hire so and so." And he'd drive away, and then he'd tell me to go finish doing it. You know, and the guy come back, start getting mad. You know, well, come time for us to go home, our crate had a big forklift driven right through it. You know, it was like
No.
it was like this guy's caught up with it. They weren't going to let us get away with it. But
But
yeah,
that's crazy.
I enjoy doing all the trade shows around the country and seeing different parts of the U.S. But that was a good part of the working.
So did you guys like go after like school photography first? Was it seniors? Like I know you talked about earlier, I mean offline about Olin Mills. Was it like church directory type stuff? Was there like a certain niche that you guys were going after first?
Well, I think the school photography is what got us off the ground because School Pictures Incorporated was right there in Jackson, Mississippi, and Delmar was in Charlotte, and Denny himself had gone to both those companies and pitched, our backgrounds to them, and that was before we had a folding out catalog. We used to have like a big poster, like a poster catalog that had everything on it. Those guys were like glad to see somebody else other than Pierce, because like I said at the time, there was only one other company, Pierce, out of Minneapolis, and then so that I think that's where that's about when I started working for him, when business started really growing.
Yeah. Did they like place an order for like every camera?
Yeah. I mean they'd order backgrounds for all these school photographers. But then we started mailing to the professional photographers the PPA list, and then started doing their trade shows, and the regular studio business just started picking up and growing. But we were banging and knocking backgrounds out left and right. We were pretty busy, and year after year we were growing every year. It wasn't until digital came around that where things started slowing down, and people started using the iPhones. It started dropping off quite a bit. But
yeah,
the photography industry, I'm sure, has taken a big hit. But before all that happened, we were growing every year. It was just a new year. We were adding on to our building almost every year, just adding more to it. We built a new building, from where we were in that cotton warehouse. We moved out to outside the city somewhere. We weren't there 2 years. I talked to you earlier about the fire, the first fire and the second fire. The first fire was we just moved into this building, and this would have been, I can't think of what year it was, probably 79 or 80, that we just moved in, and somebody broke in and caught the place on fire, and we had to put up a big circus tent out in the parking lot. And that's where all our artists were painting, and we rented an office trailer to run the office out of while they rebuilt or repaired the fire damage.
Jeez. So someone broke in and like put it on fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
We still are in an area that's not really, nice area, but it's coming around now. It got a little bit better, but yeah, we didn't have a fence up. We had a glass door. We didn't have it the way it is now. Now everything's protected with a big fence, and everything's solid with solid doors. Yeah, somebody had come up and just threw a brick through the glass door and got in looking for money or something. And we have a big safe. It was all locked up, but set fire to the place and pretty much didn't burn it completely down, but burned it pretty much, damaged it pretty bad.
It's probably that other background company that you guys went after.
Probably was then,
yeah. That's pretty crazy. I was just thinking about that. Like, if a massive company made a huge order for X amount of backgrounds, it would be by hand painted, and there would just have to be multiple people going in the space, knocking them out consistently. Maybe similar look as well, I'd imagine, for some of the masters.
Yeah, I mean that's what we were doing. CPI they were running all the Sears portrait studios.
Yeah,
we started getting their business, and we started doing Olin Mills' business. But somebody like that, they'd have 200 stores, Each store might have 3 or 4 backgrounds, and so we'd get an order for 300 or 400, stores like that. And at that time, we probably had at one time, 10 or 15 artists working for us that were painting these backgrounds, and we would set them up in these stalls like production areas with these canvases leaning up there, and we'd have people that would, all the artists would just paint it. That's all they did was paint it. We'd have somebody else pull it down, stretch it, prime it, put it back up there again for them to paint.
Holy wow!
And they could knock out 1 or 2 a day easily, depending how big it was. But it was a big production.
I bet. How did you get them to kind of get like a consistent look? I mean, that's always been a big thing, and at least in volume.
Well, we'd have a sample that we start out with, and they just hang it up. They just look at it and paint it. Artists, they just can reproduce it. So it's not, it's not as easy as it sounds, and maybe might not be exactly the same thing, but as long as you use
very close
colors and the same paints and everything in the same pattern, it looks very close. We've dealt with, even with some of your orders we've had before we were printing them. We'd have issues with the way they're painted. It's always going to be a slight difference because they're hand painted.
Yeah.
But they're usually close enough. I know in the school industry, especially for a yearbook, you want them to all be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's where our printing came in. We started printing about 12, 15 years ago, and it made so much difference when you needed a volume like that, because everyone would be printed the same.
Yeah. Could you imagine, like, you get the order for like 400 school day backgrounds, and then the one guy's like, you got to print like 400. You got to paint 400 of these over the next like 100 days, like the same thing over and over again. That guy must have been like, oh my gosh.
We've done it.
Really? Jeez.
It may not, we would turn it over to a couple different artists, and that's where you run into a problem where you get 2 or maybe 3 artists painting on the same order.
Yeah.
They may not all be exactly the same because each artist is going to be a little bit different. So that's always something we had to deal with. But for the most part, we'd make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
When printing came through, that just made a world of difference.
Oh, yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll definitely ask about that, further down, like when you guys like got into printing and kind of like the first printer. But before that, you kind of touched on that prop company, and then obviously you guys started doing it yourself. Legendary, the right now 2026 white prop, everybody has, right? Like who invented that? Like who should we write in the checks to?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'm not sure. I can't remember how that came about, but I'm sure it would have been through Delmar or school, SPI, School Pictures Incorporated. When we started making those wagon wheels and props, we started making those numbers. I guess Denny had the idea of making these big solid numbers that would fit into a base, and you could change them every year.
Yeah.
So you had a base, and you had an 8 and a 9, and then every year you could buy the next number, making it a 9-0, and then a 9-1, 9-2, and they all fed into a base.
Yeah.
And then as that was a molded urethane that the foam would go into a mold, and you'd have a top that goes on it, and it goes into a press, and it presses it for like 15 minutes while that foam rises and hardens. And then once it comes out, you got to demold it and scrape it down and then get ready to paint. But eventually we got into the styrofoam hot wire cutting, where you could set it up and the numbers would be all as one piece, cut out. And I think that's kind of what the kind of number you use now currently. But then we would hard coat it. We'd take the styrofoam, which was a real soft, like a styrofoam ice chest type material, but it's a 2-pound density. But we would spray it with a urethane hard coat that would give it like a rock hard finish. And that's kind of that's pretty much what we do today. And it's environmentally a lot easier on the environment as far as all the chemicals involved. It's not the urethane stuff from before was real nasty. You had to be careful how you disposed of everything.
Yeah.
But the styrofoam we cut now and hard coat's really the way to go, and that's what we currently do. But that made it so much easier to produce.
Yeah, Bob, that was your chance to say that you invented it, and you could have taken all the glory for that.
Yeah, I can't say I invented or had a big part in the twist flex, the pop open type background.
Oh yeah, yeah,
People had them in your windshield as reflectors.
yep.
And I had a photographer up in New York, Michael. Can't think of his last name. Called me one day. We were talking on the phone, and he says, "Why can't you do this?" And I started thinking, I don't know. Maybe we can, So me and another fellow started talking about it, and next thing you know, we had this pop open twist flex is the name we termed and called it the pop open background. So I would say I did invent that one. It's all our competitors have it now.
Yeah.
Pop open type backgrounds.
I have a kid's tent like that, and I swear, like every time I got to put it away, of like how much of a pain in the ass it is to get back in that bag. I just hate it.
Yeah, those are the ones that came afterwards. I know what you're talking about because they got 3 or 4 different rings. You got to get them just right.
Yeah, yeah,
But the background was just one panel. They're pretty easy to do.
yeah. Those ones, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So, talking about props and backgrounds, like any like weird requests or things that kind of stick out in your mind, and obviously you just did it once, and you're just like, whoa, I don't know what that guy's going to use that for.
Well, we've done, yeah, we've had, like we actually ended up putting it in our catalog. Guy wanted a big wrench, like a big pipe wrench type thing. Not sure what he needed it for, but it turned out to be a pretty nice prop. We sell it every once in a while. We'll sell one about 5 feet tall. It's like a big wrench.
A giant wrench?
Yeah, it's like a pipe wrench. And then they use it, and then sometimes they'll call and say, "Can we get a big hammer?" Can you? With this styrofoam stuff, you can hand carve it or hot wire carve it, and as long as you hard coated it, makes it hard like a real thing. So it's pretty nice.
Jeez. Yeah.
The baby tub was always a big.
Oh yeah.
That was something that came about.
That was definitely in the catalog all the time. We always saw that thing.
Yeah, that was
the baby tub.
Been a good seller.
Yeah.
And seashell, that was another good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah. T, do you remember when Dad like bought a prop? And I don't know if it was from you, Bob. It was like a giant pickle.
Yes, I remember that.
That wasn't us.
That wasn't you. Yeah, I didn't think you would make something like that. Anyways, our dad bought it, and it showed up one day, and he's like, Come to the office. I got to show you this new prop." It was a giant pickle, and we're like, "We cannot like use that. Like, do you know how many like offside things are gonna happen with that thing?" Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I thought it was so great. We're like, no, it's the dumbest thing ever.
Good intention, but like just like the first thing that every guy takes the pickle for. Come on, like we're a family-friendly operation.
Yeah. So
with the hammer and the wrench go.
The hammer and the wrench could go with it too, I guess. Yeah. So if anyone's like listening out there, if anyone needs a giant pickle prop, like message TJ and I on the side. We'll get you a smoking deal for it because it's just taking up room. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they use the crayons for too.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the black ones. Yeah. Well, Bob, so let's talk about so you guys hand painted like paint backgrounds. You still hand paint backgrounds now, but obviously like advancing technologies and consistency and probably the cost. You guys got into printing backgrounds. When did you guys get into that and get your first printer?
Yeah, it's been over 15 years ago. Our first printer, I think, was obsolete within the first year. The first printer we got was a 16-foot wide, like billboard printer.
Jeez.
These things are expensive. I mean, you're talking about $500,000 or more, for a big printer.
Yep.
But when it was 16, and we were thinking, well, we could print 2/8 at one time, and or just be able to print something big. But honestly, that we had that printer about a year, and it was already obsolete, and we ended up scrapping it and buying another, or actually two 10-foot printers. And but and it seems like we get a new one about every 2 or 3 years. Because they get so much better.
Yeah.
But that's really transformed our business. If we hadn't done that, I don't know how we could have kept up with the demand we had for scenic type backgrounds. Because we were hand painting bookcases, hand painting all these scenery things, and then when we started printing them, we could print pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until probably about 5 to 8 years after we started printing that we started printing the old master type. We were still hand painting the abstract stuff and just printing sceneries and stuff. But then we started. Somebody had requested about one of our old masters to be printed, and then so we started getting into that. And now that's a lot of what we print is the abstract old master type look, that people tend to use. And we still do a lot of scenery stuff. Of course, we do a lot of work for the cruise ship industry, and we do a lot of other sports type backgrounds that are scenery type backgrounds. And we do a lot of custom. People send us their file. They want an area in their city, like a little park or something that's in their city. They want to recreate that in their studio. So we'll do something like that. And then we do a lot of corporate step and repeat logo type things. We've done all the NFL football team logo step and repeat stuff for them. And I got the opportunity to go out to Los Angeles to visit the NFL and talk to them about their backgrounds and their presentation and everything. We did all that for them. That was business for us for a while.
That must have been a pretty fun project.
It was, yeah. They're really nice to work with, and they've all gone now to more digital on-screen, green screen type thing for production. But for a while, we were doing every team. We would do a printed background with this, team logo on it, step and repeat it across it. But we still do a lot of custom print. A lot of corporations, hospitals, universities, all their audio-visual departments or something. They put in roller systems and a blue screen or a green screen, a white and a gray, and then maybe a chroma key. Not a chroma key, a custom logo, step and repeat or something.
Yeah.
So that's big business.
Going back to those printers, from film to digital, even for us, people are used to having machines and paying that thing off in the first year or two, and then running it for another 20 years, and then getting to digital. And then, like you said, the first year it's obsolete, and then you're still making payments on the machine that you scrapped years later. And then you're into a new machine because technology was moving so quick right out of the gate.
Yeah.
How was the quality of those first ones? Was it acceptable, or were people still I'd rather still have it painted?
No, they were really good quality. It's just
yeah.
The newer machines were just better or even faster, and that was the thing. Some of the printers we have now, we've had them several years, but when we first started out, they changed so much that we would change about every 2 years. Seems like we would change printers.
Yeah.
The first one was just way too big, more than what we needed. We didn't really know what we were getting into. But the good thing was we were able to use parts off it for another machine we built for coating canvas. We started coating.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
We started coating our own material for different companies, for either chroma key, or if somebody wants solid color, or even our prime canvas. At one time we were priming our own canvas, and we built a machine to do this with, and so we were able to scavenge parts off one of those printers, our rollers and different things, to make it work.
Oh, that worked out. Yeah.
Some of that worked out. Otherwise, we just sent it to the junkyard and sold it for scrap metal.
Yeah, exactly. You talked about the term old masters, and obviously we know what it is, the portrait background. Where did that name come from?
I believe it came from, just like Leonardo da Vinci, the old masters, when they used to paint portraits, of dignitaries or queens or kings and stuff. They had these, what they call them, the old masters. They would have the picture like us, you see us, but behind them they would have the abstract look of what we actually paint now. And I think that's where it came from.
Really? Yeah.
It's funny. That's like a good question.
The artist friend that he hired was named Mark Will. So really, Denny and Mark who started this company.
Yeah.
Mark was the original artist, and he was a really good artist. He's probably the one that gave it the name Old Master, as a background type piece. So I'm not sure how it all evolved out, but the way I understood it was the Old Master came from just way back in the day when they used to hand paint portraits, of dignitaries.
Yeah, I feel it's just a term we use all the time. And then as you're talking about it, I was like, where'd that name come from? We gave you another opportunity, Bob, to take.
You should have taken.
You should have taken that too.
I'm not gonna put my name out there and take credit, and then somebody come back and stomp on me for doing it.
They'll never know. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's wild though. It's just like it's such a normal part of like what we talk about in our lexicon, but I have no idea where that came from.
Yeah.
80% of our sales come off a master's background. Like, oh yeah, like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. It's like a term. Like, just go shoot it on the Old Master. You say that to someone outside the industry, they have no clue what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, that's nuts.
You got me thinking. I might have to go look it up here after we get.
There you go.
Take credit for it and make it with you.
So, Bob, do you remember coming to your first SPAC?
I don't know about the first one. I remember we used to go to the Rio Hotel, and that was just such a big thing to go to the Rio because it was such a nice hotel for.
It was new back then, right?
At the time, yeah. For what you'd get, you got these big suites of a room, and then you're off the strip, but the hotel was just fabulous.
Yep.
I just remember Gary Krantz. He was always a good promoter for SPAC, and back then it was the School of Photographers of California.
Yeah,
that was always a good group, for our product. We were good people, and but yeah, I just your dad and Gary Krantz would always look forward to seeing them, at that show. But
yeah, we a lot of characters in our industry, right? Like, you look forward to seeing these guys and just some guys so hilarious. Yeah. So back then at the Rio, there must have been like less than 10 vendors. Like, there's probably not a lot of vendors then.
I think probably more than 10, but it was a small thing for us. It really wasn't a trade show. It's more like a sales meeting.
Yeah.
It wasn't a typical booth that you set up. It's more like a tabletop, just a handshake, just to meet people that you might talk on the phone all year long, but you don't really come to meet the SPAC to meet them and start a relationship and start building something. And you might be talking to someone who has 15 or 20, school photographers out on the road.
Yep.
Not just one person in one studio, around the corner, but somebody who does a lot of volume. And that was the key thing. I know y'all didn't have the big people there like Life Touch or any of the Delmars or any of the big people there, but all the independent people were there, and they represented a big volume of our business.
Yeah, it all added up. Yeah. I mean, I remember, obviously our dad, brought us to all the trade shows and introduced us to like guys like you, like basically everyone, right? And just like, if you need to buy background, you talk to this guy. If you need to buy this, you got to talk to this guy. And we always go by the Denny booth. He'd be like, okay, you need to figure out and plan and put your order in now because these guys are going to be busy for like the next couple months because they're just doing trade shows. I remember you just with like the notepad or the NCR paper, just like taking orders, and then us literally on the floor looking through that catalog and like picking out like the next 4 backgrounds for that year, like right on the spot, or asking you like, what have you sold a lot of, right? So we were kind of looking at you for like what the trends were. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so true too, because the SPAC was always in January, and people would be getting ready for their spring shoot. They'd want the backgrounds right away for spring.
Yeah.
So in y'all's industry, you really got to plan ahead, in order for us to get it made, to get it to you in time. So it's always good to, order your spring stuff in the fall and order your fall stuff in the spring, so you have plenty of time to make it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And as you, sorry.
I was going to say, yes, times change. So, what's popular now may not be popular next year, but always looking for something new and different.
Yeah. And you know that we always say as photographers are not like always like good planners. So, there's a lot of like, I need this right away type rush. Yeah. Yeah. You know that.
Yeah. I have, there's a few people like that every year. I mean, I'm not going to throw out any names, but
just call them out. Just call them out.
Maybe they'll change.
Yeah, this is your time.
Enrique Munoz down in Miami. He's a good friend of mine. I mean, I love him, but he'd always call me at the last minute. I need these next week or something.
Oh, Enrique.
We'd have to rock down to do it and get it to him, but he's a great guy.
I love that we just called him out. So good. Yeah, he's awesome.
I'm not sure. His sons are running. I'm not sure how much he's involved anymore. He might be retired, but I haven't talked.
They're still in it. Yeah, him and Alberto are still running the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the kids or the family's like pretty well involved now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that era of like backgrounds and props of like the industrial steel? Remember, like you had like the chain and like the big rivets and everything. Yeah, tell us about that era.
Well, a lot of that came from when we started doing. We bought out the company Scenic Design that was up in Utah.
Oh, okay.
They were a big set designer company, kind of like Off the Wall was. And when Off the Wall went out of business, we bought some of their stuff at auction when they were selling everything off at auction. But Scenic Design had developed, some of these looks like industrial warehouse, raw steel type looks and props. And so when we brought that all in house, we started making that and then started making backgrounds to match it. And they became real popular, mainly in the senior industry. Senior, that's the kind of stuff seniors would love. And we made a lot of different backgrounds, those Flex Tex rubbery type backgrounds that had the 3-dimensional surface to them. But you're limited in size. You can only go, I think, 8 feet in one direction. So a 10x8 was the kind of standard size for that, or either 5x8. But they were molded or actually sprayed into a mold, and it came out like a real thick rubber you could hang. But they were 3-dimensional. I mean, they're really good backgrounds. And I remember one of those was the rusted steel prop that looked so.
Oh yeah, the rusted steel. Yeah.
But eventually that kind of went away too. The chemical that was used to spray that rubbery stuff got to be too expensive and hard to get, till we eventually got phased out. And but out along the same time that we had started doing the printing, and we found that the printed background of something similar would look just as real. The printed backgrounds, if you lit it right and everything, you couldn't tell the difference. So that's where our printing really, stepped up with different designs, and we had a warehouse type of a look.
Yep.
But any of those printed backgrounds that had depth to it, something in the foreground and something way back in the back, they would look so real that depth would just come right through there. I remember being in Las Vegas at the wedding convention, and one of the camera people wanted to borrow a background from us, and we'd send which we did quite often. Somebody would want a background for their booth.
Yep.
We had just come out with these corner type backgrounds that looked like you were shooting into a corner of a building. So, and they had one hanging up, in their booth. And we were walking, early in the morning. You get there early, you're walking into the trade show, going to your booth, and you can see this thing way off in the distance. And you can see that corner, and it just looks so real. I mean, when you get up to it, it's just a flat surface.
Yeah.
But the image of the photograph of the background was a corner. It went up one wall and down and out the other way. And we were just amazed how real that looked, And it reproduced well in the photographs too. We sell a ton of them now today as well.
Still, wow.
We have a whole series of, I'd say a series, probably 6 or 8, but just corner type backgrounds, different colors and different patterns and different walls.
Wow.
Yeah. Speaking of which, when we were, doing, printed backgrounds, we went to New Orleans and shot a whole series of just doors, people's doorsteps or entries.
Oh yeah.
In New Orleans, and we had all sorts, and still do, all sorts of looks of doorways. And a lot of those were shot in New Orleans.
That's right. Actually, yeah. You think back, like you still see those those backgrounds in the catalog. Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the that industrial area, we always kind of like love it. Like that Oakley type scene. So that kind of like had an era there. Yeah. And then T, do you remember
I know where you're going. Are you gonna talk about the scene machine?
No, not yet. No, we'll talk about the scene machine. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But we had a group room in our basement. Remember that? And we ordered like the street scene from you guys, and it had the sidewalk and the fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Like it was like a full like set, and we thought it was gonna be like the awesomest thing, right? Like, and then kids would come in like all like dressed up, and then people started calling it the hooker scene because everyone's dressed up on the street.
Like girls in like nice dresses, and then they're on the street for the group room.
Yeah.
And it got turned into the prostitute scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one didn't get too big.
You had it set up in your basement like that, like a street scene?
Yeah, for like groups, we ran out of room in like our camera room, so we built this like group room in the basement. It had like the raised sidewalk, like full. Like, it looked really good. And then like literally, like I think like a week into it, like everyone was calling it that. We're like, oh my god, like we didn't even think about it. Like we just got like so like invested in it. I had like graffiti and stuff. But yeah. So
the rubber bricks.
Backlash on it.
What's that?
Did the schools give you some backlash on it?
The kids immediately. Oh yeah.
It was. Yeah, it went down to history with the black crayon, like just kids in their imagination. Yeah. But I mean, a lot of people got photographed on it, so like it worked. It just yeah. If social media existed back then, it definitely have a hashtag. We could say.
Oh yeah, we would have got murdered.
Yeah. Actually, T, talk about the scene machine. We dabbled in that for a bit.
Was that also like something that you guys were invested in or distributed? Or like, I mean, you guys were
no, we sold some of our background images for that. Every once in a while, somebody would ask about an image that they could use in that, and then I'm trying to think. We sold our roller systems to roll the screen up and down. We worked with Henry Olds.
Henry Olds, yep.
Yeah, we worked with Henry Olds at some point. He would buy a single roller system, to roll their screen up and down. But the actual scene machine, for us, it was like a competitor. It was somebody that was, you could put everything on a slide and all this stuff. But we always pushed it as being a lot real technical and hard to set up, and I don't know. A lot of people bought them, ended up in their closet, like they would never use it. But it was more of a competitive thing with us.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I mean, we bought one. We did it, and we put it in our mobile studio, and of course, the mobile, like it's on wheels, and you got to line that thing up so perfectly, and if someone walked or whatever, it would just shake, and it would just it was hard to dial in, and it's probably still in our closet actually. Yeah.
Well, that's what we would hear a lot of things just like that, and it became a selling point for us when we're trying to sway people away from it to buy backgrounds.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Maybe we'll send you ours for your retirement gift when you actually retire.
Yeah, yeah.
So you said
Too bad we didn't. Too bad we
what's
didn't have it before the fire. We could have burned up. We claimed insurance on it.
let's talk about that fire. So the second fire happened what year?
That was the fall of 23, just 3 years ago. It
Yeah,
was
and you
that was pretty bad. We had gone home for the day, and about 6:30 that night, Amy had texted me and said the building's on fire,
uh-huh.
and so I immediately drove out there. It wasn't even dark yet; it was still daylight. And the fire department was there, and they were there. Nobody was there when it happened. And they determined it was some kind of electrical short or something that started it.
Oh,
But thankfully, nobody was hurt.
yep.
But we had a lot of paper stock. We've been selling seamless paper now for several years, a lot on Amazon. We have our own brand of paper that we sell. We had thousands of rolls of seamless paper. We had, when we buy our baby tubs, those are made up. We usually have, 300 or 400 of those on the shelf. A lot of plastic articles, and then the styrofoam stuff that we hand carve and cut out. A lot of styrofoam in stock. So all that stuff that burns real easy.
Oh yeah.
So once it got going, it was like, man, you can't go. And I sit there and watch the fire. It started back in the very back of our buildings. We basically had two big buildings parallel to each other with some adjoining passageways between them, that were set up on two different lots. And it started in the very back in our plastics area. But once it got going, it moved all the way up to the front office. And I sat out there and watched my office just burn up.
Oh,
I had a front
jeez.
office toward the front. It was a total loss. I mean, everything that our shipping department, electrical department, our warehousing, art department. Thankfully, like I mentioned earlier, our printing area where we do all our printing backgrounds was in a separate building on the back end of our property, which we housed our IT and graphics department and printers, and none of that was affected. So after the fire, our office people were able to move into that building and make room to still be able to print canvas and trim it out. We had to set up areas to be able to trim out canvas and then set up a mounting area to mount it. So that part really didn't slow down too much. When somebody ordered a printed canvas, and that's a big majority of what we do is printed.
Yep.
We don't have near as many artists as we used to have, but luckily that wasn't affected too much. But we weren't able to make any kind of prop. No, our wood shop was burned up, our plastics building was burned up. So part of the reconstruction was the back end of one of our buildings that wasn't burned up too badly. When they tore everything down and started hauling everything off, that back part of the building, which used to be our art department where the artists were painting, we were able to cut that off and actually just put new walls and new ceilings and make that a new separate building for our plastics production.
Mm.
So we were able to get started producing plastic prop goods, within a year or 6 months. Got that part done first. And then the rest of the main building up front, which housed our main office, our shipping department, electrical department, wood shop, all that had to be rebuilt. And that was instead of being two buildings side by side, we just made one big building across the front. So it's a lot of it's probably not as big as what it used to be, but it's all open, which makes it a lot easier now. Before,
Yep.
like I mentioned before, we were growing so fast, we would add on to this building almost every year.
Yeah.
And every time you add on, you got this wall that blocks everything for airflow, and it's
Yep.
we add on another 100 feet or 200 feet, and we got another wall. Well, with our new building, it's all open. And remarkably, we found that heating and cooling is so much more efficient now because
Yeah.
the airflow is so much better in there. So it's nice.
Yeah.
But it took us over a year to get rebuilt and back up. Um, we've come a long way, so it's been a struggle, but fortunately our business has held up. And customers have been understanding. We've had
Yeah.
some customers. And I meant to tell you, talking about SPAC, we have a lot of customers in Australia, but a lot of them had ordered these big muslins. We paint muslin backgrounds, and the bigger ones we paint, the 12 by 20, 16 by 20, or 16 by 30.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those are done on some really big frames, and we couldn't do those outside during all the reconstruction and rebuilding part of it. And honestly, I had some customers who had 4 or 5 of these things on order, and these are some customers we have in Australia, and they were just so patient, understanding that we couldn't. They just had to wait,
Yep.
wait over a year. That's what they'd already paid for, and eventually we got to the point. Even when we were building, we were painting some of their muslin backgrounds outside.
Yep.
And then we turned another building. We used to have a building out back for chemical storage, like flammable chemicals.
Yep.
We turned that into a small art department that the artists could get into and paint indoors, so they wouldn't be outside trying to do it in the elements. They'd actually be indoors. But so we converted that over to a little small studio for them to paint in while all the reconstruction was going on. But these big muslins had to be done outside. And we would lean the frame up against the building, and the artist would go out there and paint it, and then they flip it around and paint the other half. But even still, the bigger ones, we just weren't able to make a frame that big. In the studio, in the office or the warehouse, once it's rebuilt, we have a mechanism or a big way people can turn these frames, but we couldn't do it outside. But anyway, those customers in Australia were real patient with us as far as waiting, for us to make those big backgrounds for them. But we got all caught up now, and everything's nice and good. But
yeah,
I was going to tell you for SPAC though, it's a company over there, MSP. It's they're all school photographers, and it's a whole franchise in Australia. Does any of those ever come over to SPAC? I want to say 1 or 2 of those guys have been over before.
I think so. Over the years, we're definitely getting a lot more like Australians and people from outside of North America. So it definitely is growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we do a lot of business in Australia, and we have customers in the UK and Ireland, around the world. We do stay pretty busy with backgrounds.
Yeah, no, it's good that you guys are back up and running and everything is normal. That fire you said kind of like coincided when you were thinking of retiring.
Yeah, I had reached retirement age and started drawing my Social Security, and everybody wants to retire when they get older. So I had planned to retire before the fire, and then once that fire came, I stuck around to help everything get rebuilt. I couldn't leave Denny with all that going on, and it's a mess.
Yeah.
And even now, he asked me to stay on a couple of days a week, just to come in and check on things and just help out.
Yeah, making sure stuff is good. Yeah,
and that's fine.
I was gonna say you know that they set that fire to keep you there, right?
Yeah, we're not going to take credit for that. So. That was a bad one though. That was you've never been to Mobile, but they said you could see it. From Mobile, you could see it from across the bay. Over in Fairhope, where they said you could see the smoke and everything from it.
Yeah, like you said, all those flammables, like the plastic and the paint and everything else, that this must have went up.
Yeah, it was pretty big.
Yeah,
you can. You can go to the local news and just Google Denny manufacturing fire, and the local news has you can look at some of the broadcasts they had. They were filming during the fire at night when it was burning. It's pretty big.
Yeah. We'll definitely look it up. But yeah, amazing. You guys survived 2 of those. You talked about like people being patient with the orders. I think a lot of it has to do with like the great relationship that you had with like a lot of the customers, right? A lot of FaceTime at shows and
Yeah.
and probably just being upfront with them, right? Just being like, hey, here's what's happening. This is what we're doing, and this is when I think we'll get around to that. So, I mean, that the relationships that you formed over the years definitely helped out.
Yeah, I think you're right too. A lot of people are really understanding, and we've, over the years, I've met a lot of friends, around the country, and like yourself, around the world, that I'd love to keep in touch with. So a lot of them were understanding as far as when the fire happened. A lot of people are very understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like it, right? It's the industry, the nature of the industry, the relationships that have turned into like dear friendships, almost like at a family level, and I think those are all the reasons that it all keeps going. So, yeah, I know it's also why we wanted to talk to you. You're just like a legend in our minds, and like a fixture and a brand in our world. So, no, it's been awesome, like hearing more about the story, and it sounds like we're gonna keep seeing you.
Yeah.
And you're not the only one that used to think I was Denny.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of trade shows over the years, and people always come up thinking I was Denny himself. No, he's back at the office.
Yeah. He's doing the real work while you're out there partying, right? Yeah. Well, when I came by the booth this year and I was talking to your staff, Mitzi, and she said, "Oh yeah, Bob's going to retire, and he's been talking about it for a while. He's going to probably work like 1 or 2 days. You're the first guy that I'm like, yeah, we got to get him on the podcast because such a fixture of like our whole industry, and we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today and like tell us all the stories and the history." And even though we don't know where Old Master came from, we'll definitely we'll definitely kind of keep that as a mystery for all of us. But Bob, we appreciate you and thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
enjoyed it, Michael and TJ. I really enjoyed it, and hope everything goes well with SPAC, and look forward to seeing y'all again someday. I'm thinking about heading out your way for a vacation this summer, so you never know, we might pop in to see you.
You just let us know. We'll have that C machine like packaged up for your suitcase. All right, Bob. Stay on. I'm just going to end this and then we'll talk for a bit.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, bud.